Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory, and I am a varietal writer, which just means I'm a part of this kind of writers' commune in Vancouver where we write. Let's see how many more times I can say write. Well, chat, I see GS and Suki. Hello. Hopefully you guys can hear me, and I'm not competing too much with other stuff. I know I had promised some of you on Tuesday that we would continue our romance thing, and we will. Unfortunately, Avalon had a friend come over from the island unexpectedly, and I felt like I should let her off the hook because I kind of ignored a bunch of things last week as well for the same reason. Actually what we're going to do, though, is something I've wanted to do for a while. I just kind of was looking for an opening in our schedule. Hello, Nathan. The thing that I was looking forward to is what we're going to do tonight, which is we are going to try and use sci-fi in a fairy tale format. Now, I'm sure I'm not the first one to have thought of something like this. I guarantee that things like this have been done before, but I couldn't really find any good examples of it, and I really like the idea. Because almost all fairy tales tend to be about settings in the past or whatever, or at least in modern times. Like, there aren't a lot of modern fairy tales, so that's what we're going to tackle in Lit Games tonight. The show itself, we do a little bit of like movie or book recommendation up front that we call Left on Red. Then we do Lit Games, which is where the writing of that story is going to happen, which is where chat is going to help me write that story, pick what we're going to do. And actually this time I pre-wrote my own version of a certain fairy tale. And if you stick around till the end, I'm going to forego our usual section of unqualified advice, and I'm going to spend that time reading kind of a rough draft of a sci-fi fairy tale retelling. So if we fail to do it in Lit Games, I promise you there will be one at the end. It won't take too long to read either. Oh, it's my favorite song. This should be the only song, and this whole stream should just be me doing weird shoulder dancing that no one else really understands. Right, I have a thing to do. So if you're watching this and you're interested in science fiction, or you have friends and family interested in science fiction, drag them into the room. Turn on every speaker and TV in the house and Chromecast this out, because certainly this isn't what they want to miss. But anyways, carrying on with the show, it is Left on Red time. And anybody who has watched the show before knows that this is a dumb pun that Rory put together to just describe things that we have read, basically. And I'm going to recommend actually a movie. I don't think I've recommended a movie before. I felt that, since we're in kind of sci-fi mode, we're going to recommend a movie. There were a lot of thoughts I had about what kind of sci-fi movie I wanted to recommend. The problem is a lot of the really good ones you already know. Like 2001 Space Odyssey. I love that movie, but you know it. So, actually what I'm going to recommend is Moon, which has a lot of lineage, I think, in 2001 Space Odyssey. But Moon is, I think, Sam Rockwell. Is that who's the actor in it? It's probably older than I'm remembering, but I feel like it's probably about 12 years old or so. It's one of those shows where I really don't want to say too much, because I feel like it'll ruin it. But it's a sci-fi film, very stylish. It pulls to some extent from 2001. Guy on a moon, as I recall it has been a little while since I watched it, but as I recall it, he works for a mining company, and they are shutting down this moon base. because they're kind of done with the mining operation or whatever they're doing. And he's the only one up there. It's a clever show. It's an interesting show. It's got kind of an existential bend to it, and just enough science to keep it science fiction-y. So I'm going to recommend that. It's just Moon, just the word Moon. You'll know when you see it. It's kind of got a crazy cover of spiraling out lines and so on. And I think that's a really good tale. If you're looking for something meatier, I will always recommend Blade Runner 2049. I like both Blade Runners, but I feel like not enough people have watched Blade Runner 2049. It's a brilliant movie. All right. That's all I'm doing for Left Unread. We're going quick here, because if we are to write a story in our Lit Games section, we are going to have to carry on. Okay, so let's see if I can help you wrap your head around the concept. There we are. So I want you to imagine for a minute. I'm going to give you the secret to creativity here. In a lot of writers' creativity. We speak about inspiration and so on. I like the uplight I'm getting here. But it's not really like that. So I want you to imagine for a minute that there are things like theme, story, plot, character types and archetypes and arcs. There's all these kind of layers to a story, these things that make up a story. And setting. And one of the things that they do to come up with new ideas is you take a chunk from one story and you slide in a chunk from another story, and then you see where that takes you. And we're going to see what that looks like in a second here. So for example, if I was to give you a list of some of the stuff we do on Fireside Fairytales. If you haven't watched Fireside Fairytales, it's our Tuesday 6:30 stream with me reading old fairy tales and myths. You definitely should watch it sometimes. I'm sure you won't like everything, but I think it's a really solid kind of like background thing if you want to just sort of sit around, have something on the TV, which is something I like to do, which is why I do it. But I picked some stories that I think people would recognize, and anybody who's watched the streams would have heard. Things like the Snow Queen, Cinderella, Snow White, Tin Soldier, Little Mermaid, Rapunzel, Red Riding Hood, Beauty and the Beast, and of course, if you were watching last week, this week, Teague and the Corpse. So how does this work? Basically, what I need from chat right now is sci-fi settings. So for example, some of them can be very general, like cyberpunk. Now I know cyberpunk's a game now, but hopefully everyone is aware that it's just kind of a world concept that starts with a Vancouver writer actually in the 80s, and I can't remember his name right now. If anybody in chat knows, please let me know. I see they're talking about what we're doing. Holly says she follows Varietal Lit on Instagram and gets the heads up. That is correct. Varietal_lit is where we are on Instagram, and you can know about this stuff ahead of time. So, cyberpunk is a sci-fi setting. So, the Matrix, I don't know, it's kind of cyberpunk, steampunky, but it's kind of its own thing. The Matrix, like, Neo and dodging bullets and whatever. Blade Runner, though I think you could really argue Blade Runner is very heavily connected to cyberpunk, but it is kind of its own world in there. Big Drew says, sorry I'm tardy to the party. Hi friends. Hi Big Drew. Haven't seen you in a bit. It's good to see you. Welcome. We're doing, well, I'm explaining it right now, so you got here right at the right time. So, here's Creativity 101 for you. We have stories here like the Snow Queen. And so, I mean, admittedly, this was a couple of months ago that we did the Snow Queen. The Snow Queen, she's the basis for Elsa and Frozen, and we can use that as a stepping point if we want. Though the original tale is actually quite different, The Snow Queen basically steals away a young boy, and the Snow Queen story follows a young girl who was friends with him, trying to find him again across the country. And there's lots of little phenomenal moments and weird stuff like they have. But let's say you wanted to do a cyberpunk Snow Queen. This is kind of spec fic 101 here. Spec fic means speculative fiction. It's kind of a catch-all for fantasy, sci-fi, all of it. Big Drew says Winnie the Pooh is the Terminator. Yeah, so if we were using settings, what we would say is, like, how would Winnie the Pooh unfold if it was in the Terminator's world? How would that go? So we're not going to do Snow Queen and Cyberpunk necessarily. I'm just to follow through on my example. Cyberpunk is futuristic. It postulates a world where typically, why can I not think of the word corporation? Corporations basically run things, sometimes in kind of oligarchies, sometimes it's a little more veiled. And there's this violent underbelly to the city where people usually do self-modification with electronics. Those are kind of the main features of cyberpunk. So in that setting, instead of relying on like snow magic of the Nords, it might be, you might start looking at it from, well, okay, somebody could, for some reason, have gone towards a sort of cold theme in their body modification, and they, sneak through the night, kidnapping children to deal with their own losses, or because they need new people to be built into this sort of ice kingdom they're trying to build out. And there's lots of directions you can go with that, and then basically following the same story format in a lot of ways, but with the changes that cyberpunk world would demand. Holly's House says, I'm going with Andrew and saying Tin Soldier is Terminator. What? When you say that, I was like laughing, and then I'm like, is the Tin Soldier already what Terminator 2 is? Because for those who either don't remember or didn't watch the episode of Fireside Fairytales where we covered Tin Soldier, it's called Tin Soldier, so you'll be able to find it easily. It's about a metal soldier that falls in love and then goes through a bunch of hardship and then just melts in the end. Sorry to blow the ending if you don't know it. It's kind of a sad story, but it's very similar to Terminator. Mr. Incredible is RoboCop. Oh, from The Incredibles. That took me a minute. What if RoboCop was in that? More than RoboCop, what about Judge Dredd? If The Incredibles were trying to survive in a Judge Dredd world. Okay, so we're playing with setting here. And like I said, we have a story at the end, but obviously we want to do a little bit of writing ourselves. So we're going to need something small. The problem with the Snow Queen story is it's long. Tin Soldier is shorter, though. You are correct about that. So, if the audience is feeling like Tin Soldier is where we want to go, Tin Soldier is where we will go. So, let's go with Tin Soldier. Sci-fi settings. I'm going to add a couple of more. Alien, which is kind of called like working class sci-fi. It's one of my favorite genres, but it's definitely got its following. We had a vote for Terminator. So I'm assuming, do you mean Terminator, future Terminator, or present day Terminator? Because I'm going to be less inclined to do anything present day. It doesn't give me a lot of room to be weird. But future or past, or present, I guess. Beauty and the Beast, but Gattaca. I think it's been too long for me since I saw Gattaca to really remember. All I remember is that it's about sort of genetic purity. I guess, yeah, because the Beast could be impure. That's clever. The Little Mermaid, but the fifth element. All right. That's amazing. The Little Mermaid. And then we had a vote for Fifth Element. I will admit, though, I haven't seen The Fifth Element in probably 15 years, so it's going to be some sketchy memories if that's where we're going. Little Mermaid but the Fifth Element. Okay, give me some features about the Fifth Element, chat, for those of you who remember. Because it seems like a lot of people kind of have hooked into that. I do remember the Little Mermaid, but I will say I'm not doing Disney's Little Mermaid with this. I'm going to be doing my best to follow the story that we read of the Little Mermaid, which has a very different ending. Yeah, Holly, I remember that it was about class systems, but and genetics, but I don't really remember like the world features that made it feel like a different world. So I feel like if I wrote it, it wouldn't feel like Gattaca. So there was a vote for Tin Soldier in the Terminator world. I'm gonna say the future, which I know is the less popular one because it's the less popular that people have seen, but I see more opportunity there. Little Mermaid and Fifth Element. Oh, what would that look like? I mean, Fifth Element's very, very kind of cyberpunky, to my recollection. Yeah, I was thinking of, I couldn't think of her name, but I'm assuming you mean the main lady who wears barely anything and has the red hair. And hangs out with Bruce Willis until they get to something about a Fifth Element. I honestly just realized how little I remember about this film. Okay, Tin Soldier, Little Mermaid, Fifth Element. Okay, so here's the thing, though. Eric would be Bruce Willis's character, and Chris Tucker would be Scuttle the Seagull. Here's the key, though. The story has to be something that takes place in that world, but isn't necessarily the story that we were told. So we're not changing the Fifth Element to involve Little Mermaid. What we're going to try and do is take pieces of that world where there's flying cars and, a heavy class system, and I'm trying to remember what else I remember from Fifth Element, and then say, okay, now let's imagine there's an ocean. In that setting, what does it look like, and how does that change how Ariel takes? How does that change how Ariel approaches things? So I'll give you an example with Tin Soldier here, because that was the first example. Tin Soldier, Terminator Future. The Tin Soldier starts with a Tin Soldier in a line, watching a spinning. What's the name for the music boxes, I guess, with the spinning ballerina on it. Okay, so that's where it starts. So first of all, if we're dealing with the post-apocalyptic Terminator with big mecha monsters, there isn't probably... It's not interesting to keep it as a toy. The thing that would probably make sense is to have, like... Here, I'll give an example. I used to know the series. Is T-1000 the older one? I don't know. There's been so many generations of the T-1000 series. Had been, because we need a reason for it to act independently here. Big Drew says, I don't remember the villain in Fifth Element. I don't either. It's probably somebody who was kind of like gross and loud and probably fat and chuckled and whatever, because that's the way that sci-fi always goes. The T-1000 series have been cut from the interface, but not every soldier lost their way. One such soldier was the... I mean, we could try, like, if you really want to push some cheesy old science fiction, we could try to work tin into the name. Oh, Gary Oldman was the villain? Oh, man, I don't remember this movie. So, the T-1000 series has been cut from the interface, but not every soldier lost their way. One such soldier was the, Termination Insurrection Nullifier. There you go. Or the TIN soldier. There you go. He had pulled himself from the scrap heap when he saw an elegant figure upon a roadside sign. In times past, she would have been known as the Vegas Lady and emblazoned in lights. But in that wasteland, she merely smiled back upon him. There you go. So I'm not saying I'm going with this. I'm not saying I'm going with any one thing. We just need to write some things here, but this is what I mean by it. We got to ask ourselves, like, how do we create a reality where that fairy tale occurs in that setting? So what were the oceans like in Fifth Element? Were they ever addressed? Were they toxic? Were they polluted? I genuinely don't remember anything about the ocean, so people have to tell me. Because if they were polluted, then we could start from maybe she's mutated. And that's why there's mermaids. It's sort of a rapid mutation. Just gonna have a drink here. So, I mean, if that was the case, then, you know, the word water is murky, and the, yeah, there's, like, genetic reasons why a mermaid would exist, because you can't just say magical creatures exist in Fifth Element. You got to do more to justify them. On the flip side, we could also say it's sort of a mechanical thing that got loose, but that's going to be maybe too easy to do the legs. There's going to be no sacrifice in that. If it's not actually a part of the body, it's just parts. Like her legs, Big Drew says mutated, like she has legs. Like her legs are like, were bonded together and eventually developed fish scales, because their family line had been living by a polluted sea for too long, for example. And now she wants to go back to the land that her grandfather or ancestors knew, or something like that. That's a direction that I see for it. But I have no idea if polluted seas are a thing in Fifth Element. Does anybody know? If there's no word on it, I'm going to assume yes, because that is such a common trope in sci-fi. And I kind of like the idea that she's a mutated mermaid, and that Ursula is like a biochemist who offers a way to reverse some of the mutation, but obviously at the cost of her voice. I think this might be Waterworld I'm describing to some extent, if anybody is young and has a low enough value of their time to have watched that. Here, I'm going to go forward with the idea that they are mutations. So, To be honest, I don't remember the exact way that it starts. I think it starts with a party or something, but Nathan says maybe she's the same species as that opera singer. There we go. Now we're clicking. Leela was the savior of mankind character, which is common in sci-fi. She was a heavenly being, so a mermaid could be a type of celestial creature, hence non-human features. Since Ariel is supposed to have a beautiful voice. Getting mixed messages, so I'm going with the first one I saw, which is the same species, which is blue, right? And has that very high, crazy voice. Maybe she's not blue, maybe I'm thinking of Star Wars. I'm just actually going to Google it before I commit myself to something silly. Something silly. I've committed myself to writing a stream about this. I think I've already committed. Fifth Element. Singer. No, I don't want to know the actual woman. Yeah, she's blue, for sure. Okay. And I'll get a good look at her. It's got a bit of an extension. She looks fish-like in that makeup. So I think we'll stick with that. Okay. What is her species? Does it tell me? I'm gonna look this up. Diva Plavaluguna. I mean, that's her name. That's not her species. It just says blue skins humanoid of unknown species. Perfect. That's what I need. Okay. Point is, Rory, it's in space. The whole movie's not in space. Unless I'm seriously misremembering it. As I recall, they move around space, but they start in some version of a terrestrial environment. Okay, so Ariel, we could do some messing with the name. We'll keep it for now because we've been chatting about it. Ariel, that was meant to be related. Ariel's that species in the Disney movie, at least. Ariel has a beautiful voice, supposedly. Yes, she does, and in the story she does as well, and she gives it up. That is accurate between the two movies. So Ariel. Here, we'll do an early world building in the clouded oceans. About the city. I don't know the city's name. There swam a family of more than a family, actually. There swam a colony of blue-skinned singers. The cabs that flew out that way at night could see them dip away from their headlights. We're screwing up Rory's concept and just making him rewrite popular movies. Yeah, I don't think I could do that. I think I would sort of hit a wall on that. I did the first version of this I considered was just taking passages from fairy tales and trying to alter them. And when I tried that on my own, it didn't work at all. It's set in 22nd century New York. I thought it was New York. This is how I got it right, okay? All of you do research for me, which is the worst part of writing, and I just sit here and go find me facts. Okay, around New York, in the clouded oceans around New York. I'm gonna add a little world building here where no one still swims. No one dares swim? This is getting too much like how I actually write, and that will be too slow. The cabs that flew out that way at night could see them dip away from their headlights with a flick of a scaled tail. They were of the same family, species-wise, they say, as the renowned diva. I mean, I guess we could go with sort of Nathan's concept and make this kind of a backstory for Bladerunner, but if you don't know the original ending, there's very little ways that's going to work. But we're probably not going to get to the end of this. We're already like 30 minutes in, and I have a paragraph. Do people swim around New York now? Well, Kramer did. Hey, 90s reference. Anybody get it? Or where the water is too toxic for humans to go swim. Swim for fear of for fear of its toxicity. There swam a colony of blue-skinned singers. The cabs that flew out that way at night could see them dip away from their headlights with a flick of their scaled tails. They were of the same family species-wise, they say, as the renowned diva Bladerunner. But they only minimally resembled her. The story goes, there was an encampment on an island off the coast. When the waters turned, they hadn't the money to leave, and so bore with the toxins until they gave birth. Well, it's getting a little long. In drinking water and bathing alike. Where the water is too dark. Keep the ideas coming here, guys, because I'm going to run out of ideas probably really quick. If you just tuned in, we're doing Little Mermaid, but in the Fifth Element, we've decided that Ariel is a part of the same kind of people as that diva, the blue-skinned singer, and we're trying to write a little bit of a backstory that justifies why they're swimming around. We just landed on the idea that there is a toxic ocean that mutated them. Their young ones, move up a bit, their young ones came out with fused fingers and limbs, better suited to swim. Okay, so we have a little bit of a setting then. Eventually, as the lands became barren and other folks, such as humans, laid claim to it, they retreated, following their king and his beautiful daughters, singing into the clouded shore. Alright. We got our basics. Now, the question is, who is Ariel coming out for in this story? If you say Bruce Willis, nobody's going to buy that. Who does... like, my first thought is somebody who's developing their old land. Because in this world, there isn't really royalty, is there? So your best shot would be to fall in love with, like, somebody who worked for or was an heir to a big mining or development company. How does chat feel about that? One day, as Ariel was swimming about, she peered above the water and saw great glowing and clanking machines. She peered above the water and saw great glowing and clanking machines. Digging up the remains of her great grandfather's land. From when they still walked. A trust fund guy, definitely, Nathan says. Okay, trust fund guy for sure. Because he is kind of... If you only know the Disney one, he's not really... It doesn't go that well. Trust fund guy works here. Moment. Amongst the clatter of creatures scraping of soil and roar of engines, Ariel saw a man of beautiful profile, with golden hair and soft eyes. He wore finer cloth than the rest, and they all seemed to listen to what he said. She felt her heart skip and sang out a melody. He turned to look, and Ariel, remembering her father's rules, dipped back under the surface and out of sight. The Mondo Shawans are the aliens that made Lilo the fifth element. The Mangalores are the mercenaries hired by Zorg. Eric's hair was black. I don't... Oh, in Little Mermaid. If we want to keep it black, we can. We can do that. Let me think of a better word for with. Ebony is kind of a weird word for this. And even weirder with basalt hair and soft Power and money made her heart skip, GS says. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. Like, you tend to play with themes and stuff. Remembering her father's rules, dip back under the surface and out of sight. I'm gonna kind of, like, condense this, obviously. So, the next few weeks, she would scurry. I also skipped out what is kind of the big beginning section of the original Little Mermaid, which is they're not allowed to go to the surface till they reach a certain age, and it establishes her longing for the surface. Let's just pretend it's there, because I don't think I have anything interesting to add to that. Big Drew says alabaster hair. Yeah, sure. There are so many descriptions for hair. Okay, the next few weeks she scurried. No, scurried. She watched the men and their roaring beasts dig and build. But whenever she could, she caught glimpses of the young man. She had a lightness fill her and send shivers amongst her pale cerulean skin. Scurried like Sebastian the Crab. Okay, but instead of the Eric character, can it be Yondu? Are you talking about Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy? She had lightness fill her and send shivers amongst her pale skin. Along her pale cerulean skin? I guess it can't really be pale, can it? Along her cerulean skin. Alabaster is white. Okay. Then we will go back. There seems to be like the most discussion we've ever seen about anything in this chat about the hair color. Alas, though, her father had mentioned that land dwellers found them to be freaks. Mutations in offense to God himself. Save for one. An older lady at the mainland that had a dock which extended in a shadowy gulf. The gulf was filled with her inventions, mutations, and splicing and splicings, I guess. That's not really a word. Mutations and splicings of the sea and land creatures. Okay. So the Gulf filled her with filled with her inventions. So now I think we have Ursula, right? Her name was Dr. Ursula. After many forlorn looks to the shore, Ariel decided to visit her and ask that she be returned the legs her line so long ago lost. Okay, so we have Ursula. Are we gonna make her the villain here, or is she just gonna do it out of curiosity? Sorry, music break. By the way, this song is called Scootaloo by Joby. What do you think, chat? You want to see it through? Ursula... I'll write a little bit more. I'm just looking at the time here. And then I will read you the sort of rough draft that I put together when I had this idea. It's about, actually, the Three Little Pigs. And that's the way we'll wrap. Ursula was... Okay, so a villain is tricky, because a villain... GS voted for a villain. So, a villain has a motivation that makes sense to them, that would make sense to us if we didn't know or feel a certain way. So... Maybe she just sees herself as doing right by the world. And what she really wants is for Ursula to be like her demonstration of her skill. I'm trying to think of a way that we can work it so that if she... Oh, I know what we can do. Lady Ursula Zorg, creator of mermaids, dolphins, and sponge cake. Okay. Ursula, Dr. Ursula Zorg. I know what we can do. She wants, Ariel to go charm this guy, and, so that she can reveal that she used to be the fish people, and try and use that to leverage more money out of him, or money out of him, because maybe it's shameful if he discovers that, or people hear about that. That's the best idea I got, so I'm going with it. Also because the delay on the chat is enormous right now, so it's going to be a lot of silence if I don't. And Ursula wants a research grant and promises Arrow she can accomplish separating her legs permanently. That's there we go. We got it. Ursula was out tossing old medical remains to her swamp of fishes, if they could be called that. When Ariel approached, in her beautiful voice, she said, "Oh, Lady Ursula, Zorg. I have found my love, but he walks the land. Could you save me from my loneliness with a potion to return my legs? Okay, and then Ursula pondered this surprise, then smiled and said, I could do so for a few days, but I could do so forever for all your people. Were you to find me a grant sufficient? I know of the boy you speak, and he surely has such means. Alright. I know of the boy you speak, and he surely has such means. If you were to capture his heart and say little of your heritage, I'm sure when it was revealed, you would find yourself or he would find himself cause to share his wealth. Okay. Ursula. No, I know. Okay, I got one more thing. Oh, but how could I find his heart were I not to tell him about mine? Said Ariel. Ursula nodded for a moment, but knew she had... Big Drew says, hold up, King Triton destroys Ursula, restores his peeps to their fishy ways. How that part gonna get worked in? So Big Drew, I hate to let you down, but literally nothing like that happens in the original fairy tale. Everything in the third act of The Little Mermaid does not happen. The original Little Mermaid is weird and sad, like all fairy tales. I'm sorry to let you down. There's no Kraken either. Which is, frankly, the weakness of the story. Every story should have a Kraken. Okay, Ursula nodded for a moment, but knew she had... a problem. For if she spoke, her plan would not work. So when Ursula returned from her lab with the potion. Big Drew says, I like Disney's happy endings. Yeah, I mean, we had a discussion in the fairy tale at the end of it, whether it was a happy ending. I felt like it probably wasn't, but some members of chat definitely did. I don't know. I think it's supposed to be happy. So when she returned from her lab with the potion, she had a tape recorder. Well, tape recorder. She had a recorder. I'm pretty sure they're past tapes. She had a recorder and a vial and 2 vials. Into the recorder, she insisted... that's passive voice. Let's get rid of that. Ursula insisted Ariel confirm her consent into the recorder. Big Drew says not happy for Ursula, I guess. Yeah, Ursula doesn't really even come up that much in the end. She's very much just sort of an enabler. And that's about it. Ursula insisted Ariel confirm her consent into the recorder. Then pulled the first vial. She drank it, but it burned her throat terribly. Oh, my dear, Ursula said in an insincere tone. We're going to get to the end of this, and that's probably going to be all we're going to get. I'm sorry that we didn't get the whole story done. I'll tell you what my concept was for the whole thing, and then we'll leave it at that. Ursula said in an insincere tone. Well, these are experimental. It may have such effects. Quickly now, drink the second. Ariel drank the second. And immediately felt a terrible, tearing pain throughout her body. Ariel never quite did realize that the first potion was unnecessary, save to destroy her speech. Okay. Well, we've hit an hour. I need to be more succinct. I'll get better than that, he says after 4 months. 5 months, I think, at this point. Okay, so I'll just sort of give you orally where I was going with this. Ursula would be looking for money so she could continue it. So what she wanted to do was basically embarrass the heir to the fortune into realizing that he had married a mutant, because she had given her something that she knew was temporary and would revert. And she was going to try and get like video of it or something. But I was kind of thinking that in the end there would be some sort of self-sacrifice or whatever. Yeah, I think that's probably all the time we have on this section anyways. I don't know. I mean, I could finish it on my own time and maybe come back to it. But let's take a look at what we did together. we did Tin Soldier, Terminator, just as like a beginning to explain it. And then we did The Little Mermaid, Fifth Element. So I'll read it back to you, and then I'm going to read my version of Three Little Pigs, which is a bit longer, and then we will finish the stream. In the clouded oceans about New York. The newest York. In the clouded oceans about New York, where no one dares swim for fear of its toxicity, there swam a colony of blue-skinned singers. The cabs that flew out that way at night could see them dip away from their headlights with a flick of their scaled tails. They were of the same family, species-wise, they say, as the renowned diva Plava Laguna, but they only minimally resembled her. The story goes there was an encampment on an island off the coast. When the waters turned, they hadn't the money to leave, and so bore with the toxins in drinking water and bathing alike. Their young ones came out with fused fingers and limbs, better suited to swimming. Eventually, as the lands became barren and other folks such as humans laid claim to it, they retreated, following their king and his beautiful daughters singing into the clouded shore. One day, as Ariel was swimming about, she peered above the water and saw great glowing and clanking machines digging up the remains of her great-grandfather's lands from when they still walked. Amongst the clatter of creatures, scraping of soil, and roar of engines, Ariel saw a man of beautiful profile with alabaster hair and soft eyes. He wore finer cloth than the rest, and they all seemed to listen to what he said. She felt her heart skip and sang out a melody. He turned to look, and Ariel, remembering her father's rules, dipped back under the surface and out of sight. The next few weeks she watched the men and their roaring beasts dig and build, but whenever she could, she caught glimpses of the young man. She had a lightness that filled her and sent shivers along her cerulean skin. Alas, though, her father had mentioned that land dwellers found them to be freaks, mutations in offense to God himself, save for one, an old lady at the mainland that had a dock which extended in a shadowed gulf. The gulf was filled with her inventions, mutations and splicings of sea and land creatures. Her name was Dr. Ursula Zorg. After many forlorn looks to the shore, Ariel decided to visit her and ask that she be returned the legs her line so long ago lost. Ursula was out tossing old medical remains to her swamp of fishes, if they could be called that, when Ariel approached. In her beautiful voice she said, "Oh, Lady Ursula Zorg, I have found my love, but he walks the land. Could you save me from my loneliness with a potion to return my legs?" Ursula pondered this surprise, then smiled and said, "I could do so for a few days, but I could do so forever for all your people were you to find me a grant sufficient in dollars." Just to clarify what was meant by grant there. "I know of the boy you speak. He surely has such means. If you were to capture his heart and say little of your heritage, I'm sure when it was revealed, he would find himself cause to share his wealth." "Oh, but how could I find his were I not able to tell him about mine?" I guess I should just say his heart. Ursula nodded for a moment, but she knew she had a problem, for if she spoke, her plan would not work, for if Ariel spoke. So, when Ursula returned from her lab with potions, she had a recorder and 2 vials. Ursula insisted Ariel confirm her consent into the recorder, then pulled the first vial. Ariel... This happens when you have 2 of the same gender in a paragraph. Ariel drank it, but it burned her throat terribly. "Oh, my dear," Ursula said in an insincere tone. "Well, these are experimental. It may have such effects. Quickly now, drink the second." Ariel drank the second and immediately felt a terrible tearing pain throughout her body. Ariel never quite did realize that the first potion was unnecessary, save to destroy her speech and song. Okay. So, just to repeat, all we were doing was taking a story and trying to switch its setting. And, ladies and gentlemen, that's basically all speculative fiction is. Just take something and change it. What if, I gave a bunch of examples in the post too, you know, what if you wanted to put Star Wars and Frozen together? I think there's a lot of connections there. You just find justifications in the world. That said, I wanted to read you my own story, about it's my own version of the Three Little Pigs. And then we will call it, because I don't think I'm going to use this story for anything else. Sure. The three young sons of the Hoggoth tribe were scouring their galaxy for new gems one day. They started in the Glittering Band, which was an asteroid field formed in the destruction of an ancient crystalline planet. The band lit the morning and evening skies of the surrounding planets, as it was composed of crystals that split the sun into a shifting rainbow. Most of the tribes and clans avoided travel entirely here. It was attractive to the raiders of the area, beastly creatures that had a worship of light, so most found it dangerous. Also, should the sun strike a chunk of crystal right, the focused beam would have melted their hull. But the three young sons of Hoggoth had developed a ray shield that interrupted such rays by measuring their nature and changing to conflicting frequencies of photons. This brilliant design rendered such beams harmless. Each son flew their own ship and picked through the salt and quartz that floated along the glittering band without a worry. But there was a raider on the edge of their sensors that had noticed the sons of Hoggoth, and noticed that they had a good eye for gems. The raider plotted to let the sons build their stores, then he would use his phasers to destroy the ships and retrieve the cargo. It was less work than mining himself. After some time, the first ship of the first brother was filled, and he turned back to Hoggoth. The raider intercepted it and hailed it through its comms. The raider's image popped up on the first son's screen, and a great bug-eyed and toothy thing with several rows of undulating teeth said, "Ho, ho, ho, drop your cargo or I'll blast you fro." Now the son knew that the raiders made weapons of the refraction in crystals, and so his shield should hold. So the son gripped his twisted horns and said, "Nay, nay, nay, not by the turned horns my father gave." The raider fired his beam, but had a trick that the son did not know. Before the blast, he scanned the pig's shield and saw the photons ran like a wave across his ship. So he measured his blast to be a beam that would slip between the ribbons. A great hot blast carved through the first son's hull, causing him to squeal, though you wouldn't have heard it, for the air was sucked out. Thankfully, his suit wrapped him up quickly, and he floated away safely until one of his other brothers found him. The raider, for his part, was unconcerned with a simple Hoggoth, and pulled that brother's cargo of gems aboard his cruiser. The second brother, who happened to be returning with his load of gems, spoke quickly to his rescued brother. His first brother said, "His weapon pierced my shield. It was a beam and shot through my waving shield." The rescued brother said quickly, "Aha," replied his rescuer. "Though he treads this way by the measure of my sensors, I know now to set my shield to a beam that will bother up his phaser." And so the brother did. Then the raider hailed, "Ho, ho, ho, drop your cargo or I'll blast you fro." So the second son gripped his twisted horns and said, "Nay, nay, nay, not by the turned horns my father gave." Then the son set his shield to be a beam, knowing that because the first brother saw that the attack was a beam. But the raider licked his teeth and grinned, for again he measured the shield and saw it to be a beam. So he then measured his weapon to be a wave blast, and it dodged about the defenses. Again the air sucked out to limitless silence, and the two brothers floated away in their suits. And again the raider collected their cargo, unconcerned with two simple sons of Hoggoth. The third brother happened upon his brethren as he was traveling back to Hoggoth. The third brother had taken longer, as his ship was the most advanced and could carry the most gems. Upon hearing the stories of the blast weaving through both their wave and beam function shields, he pulled at the beard that spiraled from his chin. Suddenly the third brother smiled and said, "We must remove the outer hull and build the shield under it." The two rescued brothers did not understand, but followed along all the same with the plan. It was a mad fury of work from each of their stations. They pulled the hull and bent it into a box about them that had but one slit to let light through. Shortly after they were done, the raider hailed and growled, "Ho, ho, ho, drop your cargo or I'll blast you to and fro." So the third son gripped his twisted horns and said, "Nay, nay, nay, not by the turned horns my father gave." But this time he shut off every sensor on his ship, then wrapped the eyes of his brothers and him with a blindfold. None could see anything in the box about their ship, including the sensors of their own ship. The third son then pressed his shield button, but gave no instruction or measurement on how the light should travel about them. The raider set his system to scan, but alas, it could not determine the frequency of the shield. The raider was confused, and after a bit of fussing, turned to his own rage. "Well, if I cannot know it, then one or the other should blow it." So the raider aimed his beam at the narrow slit in the box about the pig's ship, then fired first off a beam, then a wave. Each shot slipped away into the box, but nothing happened. After waiting a long time, the raider became tired and flew away. And what happened to the three horned brothers of Hoggoth? No one knows, least of all them, for if they were to decide, they'd be certainly dead. And that's my points to anybody who understands the science concept that's based around. But there's my science fiction version of the Three Little Pigs. And that means that we have reached the end. And I appreciate everybody who has stuck around for our science fiction. I may do this again, actually, because this is something I've particularly wanted to do for a little while. And it's my show. I'll do whatever I want. Romance the part 2 of Romance, if that's more your thing, should be happening soon. And of course, if you have anything you want to see, or you want me to do, or something you think one of the Varietal writers would be at least entertaining at, let me know. Holly says, will you be posting the pig stories to the website? No, probably not. It's based on a kind of loose understanding of a quantum principle, so I'm not confident enough that it's accurate for how much the story hinges on my understanding of it being accurate. But that must mean that you guys have reached the end, so I guess I will say it here. It is it's a take on the observation effect in physics, which I think probably the most, which is why I chose to make it a box, so that people would have more of a chance to understand what's going on. Because its most famous example is Schrodinger's cat, which is really a description about observing life in the observations of life, or in particular photons, by some sort of sensing material seems to change whether it presents as a wave or a beam. Big Drew says children's story in Old English. Well, I mean, I think we do that every Tuesday. That's most of what we do, what fairy tales are. Unless you mean another way. If you mean like Shakespearean English, who in this group could do that? Maybe Avalon. Also, if you're not a regular viewer of our Tuesday stream, I'm gonna tell you what I told them there. This coming Tuesday, Joseph Anodi, a shortlisted CBC writer and a person who is currently writing a book for a publisher, I don't think I can say more than that, is going to come and tell us some stories from his own traditions and childhood, which is Cree for the most part. And I think you should tune in for that if you don't even normally. It'll be different. He's also going to read one of his own stories, so that'll be on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. And beyond that, remember to give the video a like for our mutated Ariel, and well, you guys try and keep yourself out of the heat. And anyways, thank you for showing up, but as you know, the shop is closed.